we're utilizing our communications as best as we can to get the word out. So very important. Thank you so much. So again, our goal of this evening is really to report back on all the work that has happened over the last 4 years, and as well as the planning that has gone in, and where we're going into the future. And so you'll hear from two, really how we set it up is, I'll first start with the elected council's work on the political side, which is the governance. And then we'll shift into the administration, which I'll introduce our CEO at that time, which will then again get into all of our programs and services and so forth, which again you'll also notice we'll be having the gymnasium, the dojo gym is full of all of our departments and services for more information again so that community is aware of what all they do and what types of services they provide. So again, just to give a high-level overview, this is an important piece because we have a number of events coming up, but you'll notice this sign as well as my t-shirt. It's called the Haldeman Tract. It's a friendship walk that's being planned. As many of you know, we have been in an ongoing litigation for the last 29 years, and we're finally at a point in time where we are secured a trial date, which is expected to be in sometime in late 2024. This is it's a really important piece to all of us, really, in our history and who we are at Six Nations. And it's about the accounting of the lands that were stolen from us, obviously within, as we all know, 6 miles on each side of the Grand River, often referred to as the Haldeman Tract. So our goal, what we're planning, and it's happening September 22nd through the 24th. Again, more information on this event is in the front room. But our goal is to bring awareness to each of the municipalities. We happened to attend the Association of Municipalities of Ontario this past week. And we were there with a strong message. The first message was that, one, we are not a municipality, and we never will be a municipality. Two, that we have a voice, and that we half of your municipalities, 38 I believe is the total, run through the Haldeman Tract. And so our goal through this friendship walk is to bring that awareness of once again who we are, our history, and again to help bring the awareness of what our court case, where the current standing and the status of the court case is. So that again is happening September 22nd to the 24th. We are looking for all and as many community members to get involved, to join in. It's over a 3-day period, roughly around 2 kilometers of a walk. There's, again, I'm not going to get into the details of the event itself, but please visit the front, talk to your counselors, I know we've, again, want to acknowledge as well TAP Resources, who's done a lot of the coordinating efforts for this evening, as well for the Haldeman Tract, again, supporting our own local businesses. I think that's been huge for this council as well. So I want to give that shout out to TAP Resources as well. Just a little bit of house rules. I know everybody probably has a lot of questions. We're going to ask that if you can, please hold the questions till after we go through the slides. We want to get through as many slides as possible because a lot of the times what we found, and when we're going and sitting at the table, is there'll be questions asked, but it would already be in the slides. So we want to go through the slides first, and then if your question isn't answered after that, we'll have the opportunity to further ask questions at that point. We also want to, again, I've already noted this piece, but there you'll find little pieces of paper on the tables. Again, it's here the matters. It's a form which again is provided to use again to write any concerns or complaints down that you have. But I always like to see it as it's not always about the complaints, but rather what ideas do you have and what solutions do you have to those complaints. So that's also part of that, and I want to acknowledge Joe Martin. I think Joe is here. He's been doing a lot of work through his office. Again, it was to help further support community in getting solutions to their complaints or concerns. And so Joe has been doing a really phenomenal job. So again, if you would like, those forms are on, and there's more in the front of the room. Just to go through quickly, thank you, Tammy. go through quickly the presentation agenda. So again, I'm going to start obviously with the Chief and Council update. I'm going to pass it over to the executive team, our CEO, who will then introduce our executive team to further go into the department and infrastructure updates, and then finally ending with that Q&A. A little overview of this evening and how this tonight will look. I want to give actually, we need a big round of applause for our entertainment. Jace Martin and band, thank you. As always, we look to support our local talent as much as we can, so it's always an honor and a pleasure to hear from Jason and his band. So that, again, we're into the main presentation right now. The kids' activities rooms is open right now as well. Dinner will be starting to be served at 5:30 p.m. right through until 6:30. We're going to hopefully wrap up the presentation portion by 6 p.m. We'll then have entertainment back in. And as well as when we'll be opening the gym at 6:30, so that community members can take the opportunity to go and visit all of our department booths, as well as the GIS presentations, which again is happening in the gym from 6:30 until 7:45. And then at 7:45, we're beginning our social dance. I know there's a lot of cool prizes, door prizes. We'll be doing the draws for them, for those as well. And then finally, this is a really cool piece that we've added, and hopefully the rain holds off. We'll be finishing off this evening at around 8:15 start time with a drone show, which is really exciting, and we're hopeful that the weather stays what it is. Okay, so getting into our update, Chief and Council update. So as we all know, we were elected in November 2019. In March 2020, we were getting notice of global shutdown. And of course, we had to assemble all of our teams quickly and fast. And so one of those pieces, and again, we have our emergency, our community emergency plan, which has been worked on for many, many years. And through that plan itself, was the establishment of the emergency control group. So that group consisted of our fire, police, ambulance, health, leadership. Everybody on the emergency control group were ultimately I think for the first, probably, I want to say like the first month even, maybe longer. We met every day. And I know Ashley, everybody can attest to those who were there. We had to do everything we could, because at that time there were so many unknowns. Nobody knew what was going to be coming down. We were slowly seeing the world shut down, and so we had to get our plans in place. And so just before I get into before I get further into this, I want to acknowledge again our perseverance as a people, but as well as I want to take this time to take a moment of silence, because we lost 25 members to COVID. So at this point in time, I always like to acknowledge all of those that we've lost during COVID. I know we even had a tremendous amount of loss during COVID, where families could not even gather to bury their loved ones. So it was a really tough time for our community. So if you could join me in a moment of silence. For that. Again, we always look to reflect and to acknowledge and to remember all those that we have lost. I know, it was such a difficult time for our community, and especially because we're a community that gathers. And so during that pandemic, we had to do a lot of work in terms of, one, it was also looking at what does it mean for Six Nations. We have our own we're our own sovereign nation, which means we have to protect the health and safety of all of our members through our own way of doing how we know best. And so one of those challenges that we were faced with is because you've seen, Canada coming out with a framework. You've seen Ontario come out with a framework of, what was red? Are we in black? Are we going to orange? All the different colors of, when cases would rise. all of those pieces. And so our team decided that, you know what, we have to continue along what it means for Six Nations, because we're not like anyone else. We're not like Ontario. We're not like Canada. And so we had to build out our own Six Nations of the Grand River Response framework, which I think was very, very, it was a pinnacle move and point for us, because that, again, gave us the ability to communicate with our community that, you know what, this is what's happening. I don't know if you recall, and I know there's some mixed emotions about this, but there's 21 entry points to our territory, and we shut down those whole entry points. That to me says a lot. That to me, and I assure you, after the decision that was made, I was sick to my stomach, because I'm like, first of all, how are we going to do this? You know, so that was that was a point in time, I think, as well, where we came together with our confederacy, because we knew that we had one job, and that was to protect everybody. That was to protect the health and safety of everyone. And so we thought, you know, we hold our elders and our knowledge keepers up so high, we can't lose them. And so we thought at the end of the day, we knew it was a bold move, but we made the move, and we decided to shut the entry to all of the territory. That, again, a huge undertaking, and it couldn't have ever happened without all of the key people. You know, as I know there was, and don't get me wrong, there was challenges. There was many challenges during that time, but at the end of the day, it really ultimately it showed who we were and how we came together and how we protected each other. And that to me says a lot. And so I also wanted to acknowledge all of it. If you recall, we had manned checkpoints. At that point in time, we even utilized the dollars that we received to help offset and pay those manned checkpoints, which were comprised of our own community members. So again, we were looking at ways of recycling the dollars that come into the community, and to make sure that goes back to members of our community. And so that, to me, again, was a really important time for this community. All while doing this and getting through a pandemic, we still did work, believe it or not. 80% of our time was obviously focused in on our response to the pandemic itself. However, we were able to continue to move on a few other things as well. I don't think we got to move on as much as we wanted to because of the pandemic, but again, I think the perseverance is what is the true testament to all of our people and our leadership. So during that time, we had the opportunity, and again, this is another controversial issue, which is the passing of the cannabis control law. Again, that was during the pandemic. And you know, I always have to say this because we have to recognize that it's not always about the dollar figure. It can't always be about the money. It has to ultimately be about the protection of the health and safety. And so our goal and our job in passing the cannabis control law was always, and still is today, all about the health and safety of products. Young people potentially going into stores, purchasing products that may not be for them, understanding what is in those products. So there's a lot of work still that has to be done within that industry itself, but I'm glad to see even, and I gotta recognize the new commission as well, the work that they have done over the past little while has really turned around, because you have to build that trust back up and making sure that community understands that at the end of the day, it's not just coming into council coffers and we're not just making all this money. First of all, it's for the health and safety. That's priority. And so that is ultimately, I think, a big success. The other piece is, and I know I want to acknowledge Councillor Nathan Wright, who's the lead on this, on the environmental task force. We were able to create a Mother Earth department. I don't think there's been a point in time, and I've been on council now 13 years, I know many other councillors as well, we have a lot of environmental issues. And we didn't have a plan, basically. And so now what we're doing through the environmental task force is to really highlight what is it that needs to happen. Because we have to, for one, we got to respect our land. I don't know, at the end of the day, we talk about being stewards of Mother Earth and everything else, but I don't think we do it ourselves. I think at times we need to reflect on our own selves and to see what does the land actually mean. Because if the land means that we're supposed to take care of it, then we shouldn't be bringing in illegal dirt, or we shouldn't be bringing in contaminated soil. We shouldn't be having illegal dumping. We should be looking at good solutions to our issues of environmental issues. And so that was a really important piece for us because we really put the environment as a priority for this term. And so again, I want to acknowledge all the task force in their work through that. And just on that part as well, as you all may know, we have a community plan. And that community plan was revised in 2019. If you have the opportunity to go through that community plan, it's actually one of the best in the country. That's how detailed it is. And so our council, we're thinking and looking and we're saying, you know, we have to utilize that plan to guide our work. And so that's what we've been doing, is we've been looking at the plan itself, and that was based upon all community input. So as much as I know we probably at times maybe send out maybe one too many surveys, but that is for our guidance of our work that we have to do to prioritize. We have many priorities in this community, and to have everything as a priority one, that means nothing will get done. So we have to prioritize a lot, and so the environment was one of those pieces through the newly created Mother Earth Department. The other piece, again, these are all controversial issues. Another controversial issue is the duty to consult. We have our own consultation accommodation process team that continuously is working with developers, that is working with proponents, so that we get our fair share of what's happening throughout the tract, throughout all of our lands. Because at the end of the day, we have to take care of all of you. And so that takes a lot of work. And so through the duty to consult, and we've been doing a lot of work, even most recent, with government to say, you know what, enough is enough. We have to come together once and for all, and we have to have accountability and transparency. And what that looks like is to be determined, because I think it takes all of us to have that. And that's something that we've been working on continuously over this past term. All the way through our communications efforts, you'll notice that we are live streamed. All of our meetings, if you're not able to get to the council chambers, we see, and this is something that we often look at as well in terms of looking at data and analytics, is that we are seeing sometimes a council meeting, the chambers can only hold so many people, right? And so when we are going and live streaming, and I know not everybody has internet and not everybody's tech savvy, and we're working on those ways as well to get, whether it be through print, newspaper, newsletter, having all those other communications tools so that we are doing our best to inform our members as best as we can. But I will have you know that there was I looked at one analytics, there was a general council meeting, it was over 3,000 views, which means 3,000 people actually engaged in listening in on the discussions of our meeting. We would never see 3,000 people packed in the chambers. So again, we're looking at ways of being innovative, getting creative with our communications, because that is what our job is, to make sure that our members are informed. So you'll notice a lot of our communications efforts change, especially with our new political newsletter, which you're going to see out very soon. Again, that is to update community of what we're doing politically into the governance lane. Ontario and Canada, I must say, they're I don't even know what to say, to be honest. I don't trust them. I never trust them. So we got to do a lot of work to make sure that we are on top of our issues here in community, but also what they're doing in Ontario and what they're doing in Canada. Because at the end of the day, in my view, they're going to be quick to, well, we're seeing it right now. They're watering down our rights right now with the Métis issue, which I'll get into. So at the end of the day, we have to protect our rights as best as we can. So that's part of our work through the governance channel. I want to acknowledge all of our CAT members, all of the team. I know Lonnie and Phil, Taylor, everybody. There's a number of dedicated community members, and for many, many years, I might add, who have done a tremendous amount of work for this community. And I don't think they necessarily get the acknowledgement or recognition they deserve at times. So the CAP team truly does a lot of work for us. And again, our goal is to look at how we can further mainstream that, so that we're looking at efficiencies, we're looking at how do we go, or how are we communicating, what types of discussions are happening and with who. Peter as well, Peter Graham, sorry, Lauren, I see Tanya, Hill, Montour. There's a lot of people involved in the team, and again, they do a tremendous amount of work, so please want to acknowledge all of them. The other piece too, and this is another big one, the increase, we always, I mean, no matter what, anywhere we go, Six Nations is known. We're the largest nation by population in this country. But I think further to that is we need to further look at our positions on certain issues and matters. And so one of those pieces is, again, I mentioned the Association of Municipalities of Ontario that we just went to. You'll go to these types of events, and I, in fact, got up last year and spoke in front of 2,000 people. There's roughly 450 mayors, all of the mayors throughout Ontario, all of the cabinet ministers in Ontario. And I literally was so frustrated because I'm thinking, well, you're sitting here, you're talking about Indigenous issues, and mind you, I don't even know if I like that word, Indigenous, anymore. I think we got to get back to, Haudenosaunee, Oglala, First Nations, because that's what the government's doing. They're trying to do a pan approach, a pan-Indigenous approach, and it doesn't work. And so one of those pieces in what I spoke to, whoa, let's talk till I blew the mic. Can you hear me? Just a little. Oh, this battery, I think, is. Can I switch? Hello? Oh yeah. Okay. Just really quickly, I don't know what's going on with this mic, but you know what? I don't even need it. At the end of the day, I think what we did at AMO last year was we got up and said, Indigenous issues are loud and clear at every front of your municipalities. But yet, I don't see any First Nations leaders here in the room. I'm the only First Nation leader here in the room, and this was happening at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario last year. And I said, well, that to me is a problem. If we're going to talk about your neighbors, who many First Nations, they surround and they're neighbors, then I'm like, well, where are the First Nations leaders? You need to include them in the discussions. And so that's something that we went back this past week to say, okay, now we did this follow-up. We were here last year. Now what has changed since then? And so that's something, sorry, I'm fixing the mic right now. Or I'm not, Cheryl is. And so that is part of where we have no choice but to attend these important tables and events. The other piece, again, everybody knows we're all members of the Chiefs of Ontario as well as the Assembly of First Nations. However, we have our position is the Chiefs of Ontario and the Assembly of First Nations, they don't speak for us. Six Nations will speak for Six Nations. However, we do have to be there for the information. We do have to be there for what's happening at those levels. Thank you, Cheryl. Maybe I'll just hold it. So, I apologize for that. Again, at the Assembly of First Nations and the Chiefs of Ontario, we are big players at those tables. But we have to weigh out, where do we get the most, it's almost the saying of where do you get the better bang for your buck. I don't think we get the best that we can get through those tables. Because, one, voting in terms of the vote itself, so formulas, for example, large bands, and we're the largest, we often get really screwed out of formulas and funding and everything else, and then it all goes to all the northern communities, and again, no disrespect, but that's just often we're not able to, again, unless something changes within the formulas of how votes are within the Assembly of First Nations and the Chiefs of Ontario, I don't know if anything will change. And so this is where we've been really advancing the work at the Iroquois Caucus table. So the Iroquois Caucus is comprised of all of our Iroquois communities that all sit at that table, and we've been doing a huge amount of revitalization at that table so that we can be able to say, you know what, I think we get a better bang for our buck at the Iroquois Caucus table. Just alone, a little fact, we represent roughly 70,000 people alone between our sister communities. That's Akwesasne, Kahnawake, Kanesatake, Oneida, and Six Nations. And so I think that's where we have more, we got to spend more of our time at those tables, because at the end of the day, I think for us as governance, we need to constantly look where is it that we are getting more of a benefit. And we know that we have a lot of similarities with our sister communities like Akwesasne and Kahnawake and so forth. So we've been doing a lot of work at the Iroquois Caucus as well. This was another really challenging time, you know, even though the pandemic seemed like that was the challenge, it was also, we went through finding our kids at residential schools, and we're still doing that. It's ongoing work. So that was something that was very, very, it was very, you know, it was hard. It just crushed your heart, because you're like, now what is happening? After all of our survivors, they have told us and told time and time again that the abuse that they suffered and that kids that were missing and went, it fell on deaf ears for so long in this country. And yet we have the mush bowl right here in our backyards with many of our kids who we still don't know where they are. And so that's something that our council was really a driver in the development of the survivor-led Survivor Secretariat, which is still ongoing. And again, it's comprised of all survivors from the Mohawk Institute. And so you can, again, the Six Nations, I think it's survivorsecretariat.ca for more information if you want on the work that's happening at that table. But I want to acknowledge even at that time, we were one of the first communities, you know, we thought at the end of the day, and it's changed, you know, it's shifted now, but when it first started, we launched a criminal investigation. It was the first of a multi-jurisdictional police task force, which was our own Six Nations Police, Brantford, the city of Brantford, and as well as the OPP. And that was, again, that was the first of its kind. And so that was something where we were very strong in making sure that our survivors were being heard and that our survivors were leading it. Just getting back really quickly, I know this is always a hot topic. So we received roughly $27 million, roughly, actually maybe 28 funds received through government sources. And we spent roughly $24 million. We have a balance of about $3.3 million. But I wanted to do, I think this is really important, and this is a report back to the community to say, this is how we protected you all in terms of, you know, the dollars that we had to be accountable for. So things like the assessment center, you would have recalled, this was all a vaccine center. This is the hub, if you recall, not too long ago. And so that took a lot of work. We had to work diligently. I know, again, there's even controversy over the vaccines, but our council had to work diligently to get vaccines to our community ASAP, because that's what our community was saying. Where's our vaccines as well? And so that's something that we worked diligently on. PPE, cleaning supplies, medical equipment, all of these are really important pieces. And again, I have to acknowledge, I know she's now moved on, but Lori Davis-Hill and all the team at Health, and all of our frontline workers, our nurses, everybody on the front lines, literally, let's give them a round of applause. You'll notice on here, again, and this is able for print as well, but I mentioned the checkpoints when we closed down the territory. So that cost us roughly $1.4 million that went into paying for people to help offset, or to help block and restrict people from coming in. Social programs and supports, isolation facilities, safe return to work, water deliveries, if you recall as well. We did 1 or 2, I believe, of free water. Whoever needed water for the community members, we waived all of those. So that was about $700,000. Our seniors, we were making sure that, you know, do they have food? Are they sheltered? Do they have heat? All of these things, making sure that our seniors were taken care of. Our business community, we knew that after we shut the territory down, we knew that we were going to have some challenges and impacts to the economy. So we had to give some of our, as we know, we're a very entrepreneurial community, and we did actually 2 rounds of the business relief fund. As well, again, further emergency support. And this is, I think, a big one, obviously communication, but I think another big one as we shift into post-pandemic is mental wellness. You know, as much as that we have all been through a lot, we have to continuously check in on each other and making sure that we're checking in on our young people as well, because I know they're suffering. And that's another piece I think that we all need to take into consideration is look what's happening in our community right now. We're seeing increase of violence. We're seeing all of the horrible deaths, people suffering. It's time that this community come together once and for all, because we're losing way too many people, and young, I might add, young mothers. It's sad. We're actually in a sad state. I hate to say that, but that's the reality. We can't keep covering things up. We got to deal with what is happening in our own backyards, because I can assure you there's a lot of bad things happening. And we, as a community, not just council, as a community, need to fix it. So again, the total expenditures of the pandemic was roughly around $24 million. Our goal with the remaining balance of the 3.3 is to have input again from you all. I think we need to take a lot of this money into mental health and supports, wellness. So again, we need to look at where we best utilize those funds, and so that will be an exercise into the future as well. That's a perfect segue into the post-pandemic. So a little bit about the administration. I apologize, I'm probably taking really long, supporting the restructuring. So I'm gonna allow Darren to speak entirely on the administration. Right now, believe it or not, we have over 900 staff through the elected council. We employ over 900 people. And so one of those, I think, really important pieces is that we got to make sure that we're paying our people what they're worth. So one of those pieces is bringing the wage parity to our staff, making sure that our staff are feeling included. I know there's always challenges back and forth, and we're always going to have those. But I think in order to get through those, we got to talk through them. We got to make sure that we're ultimately bringing everything to the table, and we're treating people with respect. You know, the amount of lateral violence in this community also, and even at our own table, I must add, at times. I tell our own council, we're supposed to be the leaders, but I see lateral violence happening right at our table. That's got to change. The other piece, I think, as well, in terms of the governance side of things, we've introduced a term which is called Gunjukwa, and this is partly of Jill's work to the political projects analyst. And this is something where I have to first add that change is never easy. When you are looking to do change, I've had the opportunity to do not one but 2 programs now at Harvard. The first one was leading to build sustainable communities, and the second one was tribal leadership at Harvard. And one of those pieces where it was the organizational behavior and change management. Those are two of the biggest things that I took from that program, and it actually helped me be able to say, okay, now how can I adapt this and put it into the current work that I'm in? And so that's what really I think what Gunjukwa is about. It's really looking at efficiency. So prior to Gunjukwa, we had committees. But what we noticed is that the committees it was repetitive work. It was almost like we get so caught up in bureaucracy of other government that we were doing it to ourselves. And so I thought at the end of the day, we got to look to streamline governance, because something wasn't working. And not saying that everything was broken. Not everything was broken. And we didn't change everything. We were looking at efficiencies and how to best move forward. And so one of those ways through Gunjukwa is to have portfolios for councillors, so that you have a specific portfolio that you're responsible for, and that you could go and report back to the community on what is the work that you completed in that portfolio. Because through the committees and everything else, we were stretched across the board. So we were all over in other areas, which to me, I don't think is as efficient as we could be. And so this is something that we are still working through. And one of the areas that we're also looking to is, I was I must say as well, like it was very difficult to begin even my term as chief. I was the youngest elected chief. I didn't really feel the support at all at times, but I think at the end of the day, the perseverance again is what got me through this. And part of that is making sure that we're setting up the next councils for success. I hate how we always have to personalize things. I would talk to members, and they say, oh well, on Bill's council, the late Bill, on Ava's council, or Roberta's. I'm like, why are we putting names to that? This is Six Nations Council. It's not about the person. It's not about me. It's not about it's about who and how are we going to progress this community. And so one of those pieces, I think, is where we ultimately have to look at our way of governance, and that's a really important piece for us. Unfortunately, this next bullet, the motion to extend the Indian Day School, we have the most schools that were impacted on Indian Day School, and I know that our members were not able to fully get to the process and meeting that deadline, which means that they missed out on an opportunity of funds that rightfully are theirs. And so our council made us a bold move to say, you know what, we're going to file a motion in the courts to say that we have all of these. We were going through a pandemic. There was minimal supports to our members, and we needed to make sure that we were there for them. In fact, our office went through many applications and supports leading up to the deadline to get members' applications in. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful. However, like the courts, and it's not our system, I know that, but we are now appealing that decision. And so council has made that decision to appeal it, and so we'll update community as we progress within that litigation. There's also another ongoing litigation in terms of, I've also heard from members who have applied, say, for example, for a level 1, but then recognizing that actually they were of higher level and looking to amend, even though they already received $10,000 at the level 1. So there's also an ongoing litigation, which we're going to do some follow-up in terms of where that litigation is. That was spurred by another community. The other piece, I talked a little bit already on this, on the engagement of political outreach, as well as this is a huge one. And this is something that we just got to do it. I'm sick of asking the government for approval. I don't know why we have to continuously sit and ask. We are constantly underfunded. We're underfunded across the board. They're barring us on opportunities through gaming, through business opportunities. But number one is we have one company, and this, I know there's other taxes out there, excise taxes. We have one company that we all know, Grand River Enterprises, that pays roughly over $220 million every year to the federal government. And not a cent comes back to our territory. So I'm ready to say, you know what? GRE, cut us a check. Send that money here because we'll utilize it to the long list of needs Darren will get into. We're currently sitting at a $1.6 billion infrastructure debt. We need water to homes. We need to build homes. We need to make sure that our members have that opportunity. So at this point in time, now, I hope Canada's listening, because at the end of the day, I'm ready just to get that check right to us. So more to come on that. The next piece I wanted to touch on is, we've been really trying to engage community on celebrations of coming together. We've been in our homes and isolated for those 2 years, and so we were really looking at ways of how we get back to community spirit. And so obviously supporting our bread and cheese events, for example. We finally got back to the original format this past year. I don't ever want to deliver bread and cheese ever again to homes. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Although it was fun, but it was tiring. The other piece is healing, the community healing event. We've been really trying hard to bring forward, because we know people are suffering. Like I say, going back to our mental wellness, family violence, the list goes on. I talked with our chief of police. It's crazy what's happening right now. We have to make sure that we are getting the necessary programs and the supports to all of our members for those really important pieces. The other, as you all know, our local member, Brandon Montour, he came up short at the Stanley Cup, but we were still very much proud, because that's what we need, more role models to be able to teach our young people that a little hard work does go a long way, and that you can truly become whatever you set your mind to. And so that's something where we decided as a council to host watch parties, to support Brandon, to give opportunity for our community to come together. And it was also a really cool opportunity for us of an initiative that we created with little lawn jersey signs that raised roughly almost $10,000 that we gave back to all Six Nations minor sports. Again, going back and thinking of how we can think of community. And so that's something that I wanted to mention as well. Just really quickly on this piece too, we're going to be, as you all know, the Six Nations Fall Fair, which I hope everybody attends, this upcoming Fall Fair. We're going to be, that board has been working really diligently, and I know this because I was a part of it, in terms of revitalizing our fair and making it to what it used to be. And so please, if you can support our Fall Fair this upcoming year, I know the board and the community would be greatly appreciated. One of the ways that we're going to further support the fair as well is we recognize that, as we all know, we have a lot of athletes in this community who are all role models. It's not just Brandon. We have many lacrosse players, we got hockey players, we got ball players, the list goes on. And all of them are actually winning golds and silvers. And as you know, actually we got to give a shout out to the Chiefs. Let's go to the Chiefs, man. Cup. Yes. So our goal, because as council, we get so many requests, and you know, we're always thinking, well, if we help one, we got to help them all, and that's a tough gig to do. And so what we've been doing and looking and recognizing, we thought, okay, let's support and recognize and acknowledge all of our athletes. So we're going to be doing some type of a parade in the main stage, and we're going to have all of our athletes, jerseys, medals, everybody from swimmers. There was even a young lady who's, I don't know even if you know, but she's the top 3 swimmers in Canada, and she's from our territory. And so those are the types of initiatives that council is also looking to do. Moving into the future, we know there is lots to do. It's a long list. I mentioned the $1.6 billion gap. We need to look at, again, our own Six Nations-led solutions. We need to make sure that we're listening first and foremost, and that we're reflecting, and that next we're actually implementing, we're actionizing. We can't just sit and talk. The days of the talk are done. We need action, and so that's something what we're also looking to. Also want to acknowledge Councillor Greg Fraser. I know he's been doing a lot of work in looking at the gaming. We always have to look to our own source revenue, community. We got to build up a business. We got to make our own money. At the end of the day, that's what it's going to take. As we're a sovereign nation ourselves, we got to make sure that we're continuing to look at Gowanil School. We've been pushing and pushing and pushing to get them a school once and for all. So those are some of the pieces that we are continuously. You may have, if anybody was watching General Finance on Wednesday, our roads. We know our roads are bad. They're really bad, right? Well, there's 7 that's going to get fixed ASAP, starting yesterday. So 7 stretches you'll see be started. The work will start on our roads. But again, that's where we got to look at how we come up with own source revenue. Because if we have our own source revenue, again, that's all government funding, which we are already underfunded to begin with. So we need to come up with other ways of getting creative so that we can do more roads, we can build more houses, we can get more creative around, again, all of these pieces. So the other piece, this is something that is in line with Ganjukwa of the governance structure, is governance training. So when I first started as chief, I didn't have a good transition, I'll be very honest. With the election was Saturday, we started Tuesday. Get to work. Literally. And I'm like, okay, the former chief passed me 4 banker boxes and said, here it is, call me if you need me. I'm like thinking, oh. For a large community this size, you would think that we should be setting the future councils up for success. And so that's something that we're doing now. We're creating orientation packages. So whoever comes in, or if you would like to run for council, for example, well, I think you should know what the job entails. And you should actually look to see, we need to get creative on the expertise. Who could we bring to the table? What types of people can come and share their knowledge? If they're a business background, if they're an educator, if they're a legal like the list goes on. And so that's something where we're constantly looking at building governance training and orientation packages for the future. I mentioned again this at the beginning, the Friendship Walk. Please, if you could join us all, you'll be seeing a lot of it. You probably already have as well, September 22nd to the 24th. This is again to build awareness up and down the tract of the lands itself, and as well as allyship. You know, I don't know if you noticed or not, but it was at the Bread and Cheese event, we actually had the mayor of the city of Hamilton, city of Brantford, county, we had MPP, we had MP Obama, we had Larry Brock. We had the most representation politically. And I think that's based upon our council's direct work in relationship building. Regardless of which, we're all neighbors. Nobody's going anywhere. So why not work on the relationship? And so that's something that we're very, very keen on in making sure that we also, regardless of, I know we have a lot of opposition to certain legislation, we still need to have a relationship. And that's one of the things I've met with every party leader at this point. On the federal side, I'm still waiting for Trudeau. I don't think he wants to talk to me, but at the end of the day, it's about those relationships. We got to continue to build those relationships and allyship. So this is part of that as well in terms of the Friendship Walk. Okay, I think this is now my time to, I apologize, I'm now going to introduce our CEO, Darren Jameson, who will then introduce the executive team in furthering the work on the department and the administration side. I want to give a huge nyama to our council, our staff, everybody in our community who continues to do this work, because it's not easy, and we're not easy, we're hard on each other. The lateral violence got to stop. I'm telling you, I'll do everything to make sure that's got to stop. So thank you so much. I appreciate everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. Now.
I used to be a musician, a singer, so I know how to work these things. Thanks, Mark. Go well done. Just a few housekeeping items. We're a little bit behind on the schedule, but that's okay. The food is going to be served momentarily. And we want to provide opportunity for our elders to be served first. So if you could just raise your hand, we've got our volunteers to assist with providing food out to you directly. And then everyone else can follow. You go up to the food station up here on the side. It's not really a buffet, but they will provide the plates for you. You just come up and grab them. So we're gonna proceed with that as I go through the balance of the presentation. We had the band's gonna come back out. They were originally scheduled for 6, but we're gonna have them come out closer to 6:30. So that gives opportunity for the presentation and any kind of further engagement post presentation, and then we can kind of go carry on with our evening. So I think what I'll do is I'll just jump into this, and there's a couple of really quick housekeeping items. We have door prizes, and we're looking at drawing those at 7:45 this evening, and they are really fantastic. There's 3 of them. The $300 ultimate dinner card, and that's for multiple different restaurants across Turtle Island. You have your pick. The second one is a family pass to Canada's Wonderland. 2 adults and 4 kids. Oh, that's a good one. Family pass to the movies with refreshments. 2 adults and 4 kids. So there's multiple ways that you can win. When you got your ticket when you came in, that's one ticket that you received. You can get a second ticket if you hand in your feedback form. That's this guy right here. You provide some feedback, 1 or 2 points, hand it in, you get another ticket. So you double your chances of winning. And the third way is the scavenger hunt sheet. So that's this one. That's this guy right here. And the answers are all available through this presentation, but also when you go visit the departments and the Joe Gym. So we want to encourage folks to go there and do that after dinner. So I think I got pretty much all of that. And we'll get into the music again later with Jace Martin and our headliner Keith Sokola. I understand he's going to do that song that everybody wants to hear later. And we'll also have social dancing with Eddie Thomas outside on the lawn before the drone show. Let's hope the rain doesn't come. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead as the food is getting served and kind of get through this as quickly as I can. And just so everyone's okay with just, you don't need to be nervous, you're missing information, or there's too much information, because there's a lot here. We will be sharing this PowerPoint with everyone through a link after this event, along with the live stream video. So that will be provided after the event. So there's no need to worry that you're missing information, or perhaps I'm going through too quickly, because there is a lot here. But as the Chief noted, this is a report card. It's giving information to the community, because we were really strong on accountability. So I just wanted to start briefly and kind of pick up on the point that the Chief talked about succession. I think that's a really important point and really a focus for this council and the administrative departments. And that is looking at setting up and having some continuity of work. My experience in the past, being a community member and not working for council, in the past has been, you have turnover in council, and especially if it's a big turnover, there's a different agenda that's brought forward. When really the work for the community is for the community. So what does that mean? That means, what are the gaps? What are the areas that are not being served? What are the areas that we need to continuously provide resources to for the future generations? That's our value system. So how can we have the administration, and as led by the council, serve that vision? So that's really been the impetus, and of all the changes that we've been working through. In fact, I view this term of council as the change management council. And yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard work. To turn a big ship around that's been going in a certain direction, we've got to turn that around and make it more efficient and make it more servant to the community's needs. And that's really been the focus. So part of that was taking a look back at the organization and saying, what does this organization look like? And it was really like this. It was very, very flat. Lots of departments, all way over here like this. And it was difficult to communicate with each other just by that simple fact. So how can we serve and bring the organization together to look forward, look more forward-looking as a group? So a lot of the changes that we undertook in the last couple of years in particular were related to building. I liken it to the trunk of a tree, and I have an image that I'm going to get to in a second. But part of that was to restructure the organization, yes, but also provide support to the core or the trunk of the tree. And we built an executive team, and their titles I'm just going to go through really quickly. Obviously, there's myself, the chief executive, which was previously the senior administrative officer. So it's a shift in that, in terms of the title. Pretty much the same job, but looking more forward, trying to create space for a CEO to be able to look forward and do that planning piece. Executive Director of Nation Building, Trevor Bombery, he's here, sitting right over here. We have an Executive Director of Service Excellence, that's Holly Smith. She's unable to join us this evening. And Executive Director of Planning, Performance, and Evaluation, that's Zach Miller. He was sitting there, he's probably running around. There he is back there. I just want to give a shout out to Zach and the team. They were really the drivers, along with TAP Resources, putting this event together. So I just want to maybe just for a second just pause and give them applause. Many, many weeks, as you can appreciate, has gone into planning for this event. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to just flip to this diagram because it really, I can just speak to it really clearly in terms of the visual I presented with my arms going like this. So what I liken it to is a tree. The organization of Six Nations of the Red River Elected Council should be viewed as a tree and not a flat vine going way out over here, and we can't connect with each other. So really what this is speaking to is the trunk of the tree. And I always like to joke about that. It's like when I came into this role 3 years ago, it's been 3 years ago, the organization is like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I talk about the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. You put the ball on the top of the tree and the trunk went, It wasn't strong. It wasn't strong enough. But everyone rallied around that tree. They put the blanket, Lions put his blanket around it, and they strengthened that tree, they decorated it, it was full. And really what that's the essence of the restructuring effort that we've undertaken over the last couple of years. is to strengthen the core, to strengthen the trunk of the tree so that we can hold those branches up. Hold the service delivery up stronger. All of the fruit goes out to the community, and that's the community under the tree. So that's our image for our restructuring. Some of the other things, in terms of employment, as the chief noted, we have over 900 employees. In fact, we have 980 employees. And again, there's pluses and minuses to that. I think in some senses, there's some efficiencies that can be made, but at the same time, that's a huge impact on our community. Nearly 80% of our staff are from Six Nations. So that wage economy goes back into our community. So that just by working for Six Nations, and I encourage people to think about that, a career at Six Nations at Grand River. There's a lot of jobs, technical, administrative, construction related. There's lots of different sectors that we cover. So I really encourage that because that goes right back into the community if you work here. Just a few highlights. We did like I was talking about the organizational review, which I mentioned. We worked with a company called Corn Ferry. They also helped us with a compensation review. I'm going to call this a legacy piece, in that Six Nations of Grand River has been notably underpaid in terms of their employees for years, in fact decades. And that's a legacy issue that was inherited by this administration. So we looked to say, well, what should we be paying our employees? So we brought in Corn Ferry again to help us with that effort, to look at what's the wage parity for different roles in this organization. And the other thing that we did, and this was a strong input and direction from council, the elected council, was what's the living wage? What is sort of the base wage that someone needs to support their family, a small family? And this is based on a family of 4 people, so a husband and wife and 2 children, both parents working. They have to make at least $40,000 a year just to live. So they were really strong. So we've got to set a base salary. That's one of the answers to the question that was gathered on, by the way. It's $40,000 is the minimum wage. Of course, we did that in concert with some of the other organizations in the community as well. So that's something that I think we all should aspire to as a minimum. It was far below that, I can tell you, before, and we're making the adjustments. We've made them. So it's our employees are paid more where they should be. So that's huge for morale and, of course, productivity. So those are some of the key pieces. Our human resource management system we didn't really have one. So now we purchased UKG, which is one of the top systems out there, and that's currently being implemented right now, ready for next fiscal year. So I'm just going to quickly go through. These are just some of the restructuring things, like under Trevor's portfolio. So we've shifted some of the departments to report to some of these executive directors, and this is an example here with Trevor's, mostly to do with land. Anything to do with land is a big piece of his portfolio. The Lands and Membership Department, the Lands and Resources Department, the Mother Earth, which is the new one that Chief spoke about. That's brand new. Six Nations Tourism. Used to be with the Development Corporation, but we changed our relationship with the Development Corporation. And part of that was bringing back tourism to Six Nations of Grand River Elected Council. They hear the matters. That's the Joe Martin role that the Chief spoke to. An area that we really needed to focus on. You know, if community members have issues or complaints, how can we better address them, and how can we improve our services in the process? So that's been a really important addition to the team. Service excellence, again, that's Holly Smith. She's not here tonight. But again, under that is a bucket called community, and also a professional practice office, which is a new area as well, which is just standards of practice. Not what the province does, not what the feds do. We look at what they do, but then we adapt it for what we need here at Six Nations, based and incorporating our Haudenosaunee values. That's what that's about. And really moving and pivoting our departments, in a sense, remandating them to be more in line with the 2019 community plan. The Chief also mentioned this. So a lot of the restructuring was framed, the framework for the restructure was the 2019 community plan. So health services will become well-being. social services, emergency services, parks and rec, social, material works, is community bucket. Everything is to serve the well-being and the community supports. The other one is Executive Director for Planning, Performance, and Evaluation. That's Zach's role. This is about data. This organization, when I came into this organization 3 years ago, we had data, but it was kind of all over the place. It wasn't really organized. And if we had data, it was used to create reports for outside governments. It wasn't used to help us make good decisions. The Chief mentioned the litigation that's upcoming next year. That's going to provide substantial monetary benefit to this community. Where should we invest those resources? We need to be prepared. So that's a big shift as well, is creating the databases, the systems to capture the data, what outcomes and measures are meaningful for us, not the province, not the federal government. That's what that's about. It's a big job, and we're on track. Other projects, the Chief also mentioned, we do surveys. We like to do surveys because we want to get direction from community. Last summer, we did a survey. What priorities does the community want us to focus on? And these were the top ones that were listed in that survey. Obviously, housing. That's kind of a no-brainer. Everybody knows we have a big housing shortage. Our roads, we just talked about that. We're making massive progress there. Water line expansion to cover the entire community. We have over 2/3 of this community doesn't have clean, potable water. Mental health, wellness, particularly acute coming out of the pandemic. It's really grown. The new Iroquois Lodge in the planning stages. The environment, which is our new Mother Earth department. Of course, flooding and drainage is kind of related to that, and residency is another issue that was raised by communities. So we focus a lot of our efforts and task force efforts on these priorities. So this is what it translates to in terms of those percentages, and it was just a graphical representation of those priorities. So we looked at our ability to prioritize from an investment perspective. How can we do that? Of course, it doesn't translate seamlessly if it's the number one priority at 35% for housing. In terms of the cost of housing, it's more. Same with water lines, same with roads. They're expensive. So this is a way to try and synergize the needs to not only what capital we have available, but what any kind of creative financing solutions we might be able to create. So housing was a priority. But I think the other thing that we did through all of this is we took a cue from that and we said, okay, Six Stations of the Grand River has never had a long-term plan, an investment plan. So one of the key outcomes for this administration was to develop a 10-year plan. Not just a finance plan, not just a community plan, but a financial plan. Can we actually do this? How can we do this? And so that's what we undertook, and it was a big product from the administration side as well. Under mental health, just trying to get rid of this here. Press the wrong button. We have a crisis hub, we have outreach team, we have the drug strategy group. We have a lot of supports and we need to build more. In fact, in our investment plan that I referenced, we have set aside $7.5 million for a treatment center and $10 million for mental health wellness facility. The other one is community standards, our own laws. We have issues with environment. Chief spoke to that. Under our Justice Department, we have some really good people, new people, that are working on community standards. This is an important, very important piece. Again, protecting Mother Earth, that's what it's about. We're also looking at our residency bylaw. We know what's flawed. It was adopted from IST and what their rules are. Again, developing a standard that works for us and getting communities' input on what those changes ought to be. Child welfare legislation review is also underway right now. because the Child Welfare Act does not work for us. So we're taking and looking at that and looking at different ways to adapt that to meet our needs. Again, I talked about the long-term planning. I'm just going to start going through this a bit quicker. And again, don't worry, you'll get the details. So you can go through it more. That 10-year financial plan, but more importantly, that's matched to future mapping of the territory. And later on, we will have the departments in the Joe Gym, but also down the hallway. In the Oneida room, just go straight down the hallway. There will be dessert as well that entice you really down there. But we have Ken Sandy from our Lands and Membership Office who will have his GIS maps and have an interpretive engagement session for you if you wish to ask questions, see what the maps look like. We've looked at everything from water lines to roads to zones that we should conserve. And the whole idea was, this is not just about land use planning, it's about best use planning. So that's a concept that we've adopted very strongly. It's like, maybe the best use for this lot within a territory is to do nothing. It needs to be left alone. Or even a part of a lot maybe can be parceled off or sectioned off. So that's an important piece, certainly for the band held lands or the land that the band controls. But for community members to see that and have that tool. Again, this is a tool that didn't really exist before. Available to our members to say, maybe I shouldn't build something on this lot because of flooding issues, drainage issues, environmental protection issues, species at risk. All of these elements are part of our layers now in our GIS mapping. We never had that to that extent before. We're doing all kinds of things. The Environmental Task Force, Infrastructure Task Force is really the driver, as I said, about the best use planning and that GIS. The Environment Task Force has resulted in a new department on Earth. We're doing think tanks with interagencies, not just for council, but great Six Nations Polytechnic, all of the organizations in the community that contribute to the well-being, education, prosperity of our community. We're meeting with them because with this court case coming, where do we invest our resources? The Lifelong Learning Task Force. What is it that Six Nations needs for education? Currently, under it's not even close. It's like a drop in the bucket. What we really need. So that's also incorporated in this long-term plan. So I just wanted to quickly. I'm not going to go through all of this because these are details. I just want to give you the highlights, the concept. But really, we're looking at about $500 million of what I just described to fund that 10-year plan. $500 million. But that's not even the full gap. The full gap, as the chief mentioned, is $1.6 billion in infrastructure. But in 10 years, if we, again, as a plan that we can implement as a succession plan for the next council, is we can tackle a lot of these gaps to the tune of a third of the gaps. We have a roadmap for that. There's a roadmap now. That's about continuity of work. That's about continuity of service. We talked about the pre-pandemic operations data. This is just a snapshot. And this is credit to Zach. Zach there yet? He's back there still working. We tracked the data at points of service that we did during the pandemic, and you can see the growth and really the impact of the pandemic because we had to shut down. You know, and going back 3 years, it dropped from 80 to 90,000 just pre-pandemic to 50 to 60,000 during the pandemic. But we found ways, hybrids, models to still provide service while still in the pandemic. We increased it to over 80,000 points of service. Just think about it, 80,000 points of service to community members. And now we're at 120,000 coming out of the pandemic. These are just additional data which I'll let you have a look at in terms of what the posts, the communication efforts that we've done during the pandemic. As you can see, there's many, almost 1,000 per year. Post-pandemic data, we're looking at developing all of that and measuring how do we respond to that. We have, as the chief noted, $3.3 million left in the COVID funds. We need to spend that this fiscal year. That will serve to support post-pandemic relief, but also a big chunk needs to support our mental wellness and our mental health. I'm not going to go through all of these infrastructure maps because I mentioned if you're interested, they're really interactive, really interesting. If you go see Ken Sandy later on, he'll go through the infrastructure maps that we have. And again, this is a report card, so again I'm going to go really quickly through this because there's a lot of detail. But just to sum it up, the current inventory or asset holdings for housing units in this community is 231 housing units for rentals. In the plans that we have, we are looking to more than double it. I think that's an important piece of this plan. And that's for all purposes, all uses, 1, 2 bedrooms, elders, assisted living. All of these elements are covered in this plan. In fact, some of them are in progress right now and are being built right now along Harold Road. You may see some development happening there. That's happening. We're also looking at being creative and putting up, making available to band members along Harold Road 30 lots, possibly 33 if we can fit them in, service lots for community members to build their own homes. That has never been done before. So that's something else that we would like to do with some of the band lands that we have and infrastructure available to those lands, which makes it cost effective. A lot of projects under the well-being, as I mentioned, in the community supports areas related to wellness. Obviously, I talked about the lodge, but also a hospice and mental wellness are the 3 key areas in those 2 service areas. I'm just going to quickly go down. Our population continues to grow, as everyone knows. That's the work of our Lands Membership Office, along with the whole land transfers. And there's a lot of work that goes on. Sometimes the council agenda has about, I don't know, this many transfers on it. It's a lot. And land is getting scarce. So again, we have to have a tool and the tools to be able to determine what is the best use of our diminishing lands. All while making sure that we think about the future generations. We've got to preserve what we can. Again, here's the population projections for our youth, for schools. We've incorporated new school sites in our GIS mapping as well. So you'll see that as well. And here they are. All on band lands. So I'm just going to quickly, this is our last slide, can you believe it? Just about. There's one on, I think I did a pretty good job on that. This is normally what I've taken about 45 minutes. I'm just going to read these. Chief, I'm just going to finish off, if that's okay with you. Yeah? In the next 20 years, our population will grow by 40%, and that's a conservative estimate. It's also expected that most of our membership will prefer to come back and live on the res. The cost to provide services will continue to grow at this same rate plus inflation, thanks to who knows what. I think the COVID crisis has contributed to inflation. But we have to deal with it. We have to plan for it. So it's going to be a huge challenge. But we have to reposition the organization and the community to be sustainable. And through the council administration, we've done our part to do just that. Close those infrastructure gaps, make sure we got that clean, potable drinking water, quality housing, and reliable services where they're needed. The upcoming court case and those settlements that come with it, it will bring new resources to the community. We need to be prepared to understand how do we invest those funds for community benefit. We have those tools. We have those plans. And as the chief noted, we strive to develop succession and investment plans for the overall quality of the people of Six Nations. It doesn't matter what political faction you follow. It's about the people and improving the prosperity of the people. Again, healing mental health and restoring our confidence is critical to preserving the strength of our current generations and supporting the faces to come. I'm going to pause right there. let you have your meal, and then after your meal, we're going to get the music back up, or while you're finishing your meal. And then I would encourage you to go visit our departments in the gym and down the hall. Go see the GIS mapping, and get some more tickets, and we'll have those draws a little bit later on. I think I did cover it all. So, now go, everyone. Hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Mark, are you okay to have a media session over here? Linda, you want to follow Daryl?